I'm really glad you're here. I've always had a bit of an obsession with strange stories, the kind that stay in your head long after you've finished reading them. The ones that make you double-check your locks, rethink a random encounter, or leave a light on before bed. So wherever you are, whether you're trying to fall asleep, studying, gaming, or just winding down after a long day, get comfortable, take a deep breath, and let's disappear into tonight's stories together. Tonight I've pulled together a handful of tales from around Reddit, 4 or 5 of them. Actually, each one a little different, but all cut from the same unsettling cloth. Some are short and sharp, the kind that hit you right at the last line. Others take their time, letting the dread creep in slow, until you realize you've been holding your breath. Maybe you've got headphones in, the room's gone quiet, and the rest of the world can wait for a while. That's exactly where I want you, because these stories, they start off simple enough, ordinary even, the kind of thing that could happen to anyone, to you maybe. But in each one, somewhere along the way, something shifts. A detail that doesn't quite add up. A feeling the person telling it couldn't shake, even months later, even after convincing themselves it was nothing. That's the thread connecting all of these strangers, all writing from different corners of the internet, all left with the same kind of quiet, lingering unease. I'm not going to tell you which one comes first, or what's waiting in it. Not yet. That's not how this works. You'll just have to sit with me, one story at a time, and let each one unfold the way it's supposed to. So go ahead, get settled in. Dim the lights if you want to, or don't. That part's up to you. Just promise me you'll stay until the end of all of them. All right, I think it's time. Let's begin with the first one. My son isn't normal. I don't know how to start this. I've written this post 4 times and deleted it 4 times. But my wife is asleep in the next room and I can't sleep. So I'm going to type this out before I lose my nerve. I need to tell someone what happened in my house. 15 years ago, my wife gave birth to our son. I'm not going to use his real name here, so I'll just call him Ray. The first 2 years with Ray were the happiest of my life. He laughed a lot. He slept well. My wife and I used to sit on the porch at night and just look at him and feel like the luckiest people alive. Then something changed. It started small. He would pull the wings off flies. Kids do that, right? I told myself that. Then it was the neighbor's cat. We found it behind our shed, and I don't want to describe what it looked like. We told ourselves a fox got it. By the time Ray was 6, teachers were calling us every week. He pushed a boy off the monkey bars and broke his arm. He said the boy made a funny sound. He set fire to a trash can in the school bathroom. When the counselor asked him why, he smiled and said, "I wanted to see." We took him to doctors, psychologists. One of them, a quiet older man with glasses, pulled me aside after a session and said words I will never forget. "Your son doesn't feel what other people feel. I don't think he ever will." We didn't want to hear it. We loved him. We told ourselves love could fix anything. By the time Ray was 12, love wasn't fixing anything. I won't go through every single thing that happened over the years. Some of it is too much. But by the time Ray was 15, we were locking our bedroom door at night. We had cameras in the hallway. My wife stopped leaving knives out on the counter. Our son, our sweet baby boy who used to fall asleep on my chest, had grown into something that looked at us like we were furniture. Like we were things he was still deciding what to do with. And then my wife found out she was pregnant again. remember the night she told me. I didn't feel happy. I felt sick. All I could think about was Ray's face the day we brought our daughter home from the hospital. He didn't smile. He didn't cry. He just stood in the doorway of the nursery and stared at her crib for 11 minutes. I know it was 11 minutes because I was standing behind him, counting every single one, too scared to move, too scared to say anything that might set him off. We named her Lily. For the first year, nothing happened. Ray mostly ignored her. We started to relax, just a little. Maybe he didn't care about her at all. Maybe that was a good thing. Then one night, I woke up at 3 a.m. and Ray's door was open. His bed was empty. I ran to Lily's room so fast, I don't even remember moving my legs. He was standing over her crib, just standing there, watching her sleep. I grabbed him by the shoulder, and he turned around slow, like he had all the time in the world, and he looked at me and said the words that have been stuck in my head every single night since. I'm the only reason she's still breathing. I didn't understand what he meant. I still don't, not fully. But I dragged him out of that room, and I didn't sleep again that night, or the next, or hardly any night after. 2 weeks later, I found out why he said it. I was cleaning out the garage, and I found a box shoved behind the water heater, taped shut, hidden under a tarp. Inside were photographs. Old ones. Photos of our street. Photos of our house taken from outside, through the windows, at night. Photos of Lily's nursery, the crib, the window above it, the window that faces the woods behind our property. Photos I never took. Photos my wife never took. I brought them to Ray, and I asked him where they came from. And for the first time in years, I saw something on his face that wasn't emptiness. It was fear. He told me there was a man. He said the man had been coming to the edge of the woods for almost a year, watching the house, watching Lily's window. He said he saw him first, months before we ever put in the cameras. He said he never told us because he knew we wouldn't believe him. Because why would we believe the boy who hurts things? The boy who scares people? The boy the whole town already thinks is broken. He said the only reason the man never got inside was because Ray had been sitting outside Lily's door every single night since she was born, waiting. I felt the floor tilt under me. I asked him why he never just told us the truth. He looked at me with those flat, empty eyes I had spent years being afraid of, and he said, "Would you have believed me? Or would you have just been more scared of me?" I didn't sleep that night either. I sat in the hallway between both kids' rooms with a baseball bat until the sun came up, feeling like the worst father in the entire world. We called the police. They found footprints in the mud behind the fence, cigarette butts, a pair of binoculars wedged in the fork of a tree aimed directly at Lily's window. They're investigating. That was 11 days ago. No arrests yet. Ray still doesn't feel things the way other people do. That part is real, and I'm not writing this to pretend it isn't. The doctors were right about him in a lot of ways. He still scares me sometimes. I still lock my door at night, if I'm honest. But 3 nights ago, I got up to get water at 2 a.m., and I walked past Lily's door, and it was open again, and Ray was sitting on the floor outside it, not inside her room. Outside the door, in the hallway, back against the wall, eyes on the window at the end of the hall the whole time. He didn't even look at me. He just said, very quietly, "Go back to bed. I've got this." I stood there for a long time before I finally did. I keep telling myself this is a good thing. I keep telling myself maybe I was wrong about my own son this whole time. That maybe there's something in him after all. something that just looks different than it does in other people. But last night, I couldn't sleep. So I went back through those photographs one more time, the ones from the box in the garage, and in the very last one, taken from the tree line, aimed at Lily's window at night, there are two figures visible through the glass. One is my daughter, asleep in her crib. The other one is Ray, standing over her. In the picture, taken from outside, in the dark, at an angle no one in our house could have taken it from. The photo is dated the night before Lily was born. I haven't shown my wife yet. I don't know what it means. I don't know if it means anything. I just know Ray is sitting outside that door again tonight. And I don't know anymore whether he's keeping something out or something in. If anyone here has dealt with anything like this, please tell me what to do. I don't think I'm going to sleep again until I understand what that photograph means. We were given one rule before entering the abandoned subway line: do not whistle. I've spent 6 years working as a maintenance tech for the city's subway system. When I first started, I thought the job was simple. Swap out burnt-out light bulbs, check the wiring, patch up the occasional water leak. But working down there in that thick, absolute darkness teaches you something real quick. The underground doesn't play by the rules of the surface world. It belongs to a much older, much more brutal reality. My name is Tyler. I didn't take this job out of some romantic love for the underground. I just needed the money, and the pay was good. While normal people walked under the sun during the day, I'd lose all track of time in the tunnels. Down there, there's no daylight, no clocks. There's only sound, and sometimes the terrifying absence of it. My partner was Miller. He was about 10 years older than me, his hair prematurely graying, his skin permanently stained a dusty subway gray. He knew those subterranean labyrinths like the back of his hand. The strangest thing about Miller was that he never asked questions. It was like he knew that not asking was a hell of a lot safer than hearing the answer. I used to think he was just a coward. Later, I realized it was pure survival instinct. The day they assigned us to the black line, the usual locker room chatter instantly died. That name wasn't a joke among the transit workers. It was always spoken in hushed, careful whispers. It was a tunnel system built in the 1920s, shut down after an unexplained cave-in, wiped from the official maps, and stamped as non-existent. Officially, there was nothing down there. Practically, well, rumors said lights flickered in the dark, and strange noises echoed out. Sometimes, the guys sent down there just never came back. Our foreman called us into his office, tossed a yellowed, faded blueprint onto his desk, looked us dead in the eye, and said just one thing: there's only one rule down there: absolute silence. No talking, no joking around. And for God's sake, whatever you do, do not whistle. I smirked. Miller just nodded. Like everyone else, I figured it was just some old workplace superstition. Acoustics, gas leak risks, pressure differentials. My brain immediately scrambled for a logical explanation. Human beings love inventing logic because it's easier than believing in an unknown, looming horror. But the black line doesn't care about logic. Miller and 2 other techs, Jackson and Lee, were riding a rusty, ancient utility elevator down into the dark. The lift rattled and groaned, shaking as if something beneath the earth was dragging us down into its maw. The air was heavy, with the smell of ozone and wet, rotting iron. Jackson looked down at his phone screen and snickered. Man, if they have Wi-Fi down here, I might just move in. Save a fortune on rent. Lee gave a nervous laugh. Stay down here for 10 minutes, and you won't even remember what the word Wi-Fi means. Miller just leaned against the metal wall, chewing on an unlit cigarette, his eyes glued to the elevator doors. I looked over at him. "You're always this quiet." He shrugged. "Silence is part of the job down here." Jackson grinned and leaned forward, his voice echoing off the metal enclosure. "So what you're saying is, if someone calls my name down there, I shouldn't answer?" "Come on, that's just rude to the subway goblins." Miller's gaze turned ice cold. "Pray that nothing calls you." The entrance to the black line was a heavy, riveted iron door. The faded red paint scrawled across it looked like dried blood. Restricted access, structural instability. Jackson slapped the iron door. Classic. Every cheap horror movie starts exactly like this. Lee swallowed hard. "Yeah, right before the monster jumps out." We unlocked the heavy deadbolts. The door groaned in protest as we shoved it open. Inside, there was no sound. No dripping water, no airflow. Just a total, crushing void. It felt as though sound itself had been strangled and left to die in that tunnel. Jackson stared into the blackness, pursed his lips, and suddenly let out a sharp, piercing whistle. The sound sliced through the tunnel like an arrow, stretching out into the dark before slowly dying away. "I swear, this place is just an empty parking lot," Jackson laughed. In a flash, Miller pinned Jackson by his collar, slamming him hard against the brick wall. "Do not whistle. What the hell is wrong with you, man?" Jackson shoved him off. "Who's gonna hear us down here? The rats." Miller didn't answer. There was deep, paralyzing terror in his eyes, far worse than anger. He slowly turned around and began walking into the dark. The first few hours went by with standard maintenance work. The beams of our flashlights barely cut through the gloom, illuminating thick clouds of dancing dust. Everything seemed normal. Suddenly, Jackson dropped his wrench. He stood up straight, freezing in place. "Hey guys, I think someone is calling me." He let out a tense laugh. "Who's calling you?" "The collection agency." Jackson shook his head, his face completely pale. "I'm serious. There's a voice coming from further down. It's saying my name." From behind us, Miller's voice cut through the dark, cold and ruthless. "Keep working. Do not look up. Ignore it." By the time our break rolled around, we were all exhausted. We sat down in a small concrete electrical cutout. Even as we pulled out our lunches, everyone tried to keep as quiet as possible. Even Jackson had gone silent. But then, Jackson pulled a pair of orange foam earplugs from his pocket and tried to stuff them into his ears. Suddenly, Miller lunged forward and snatched them right out of his hands. "What is your problem?" Jackson snapped, jumping to his feet, his voice echoing loudly in the cramped space. "Don't put those in. You don't own my ears, man. My head is pounding. I just want some damn quiet." Miller stepped into Jackson's space, standing inches from his face. He spoke so quietly his words felt like dripping poison. "It is dangerous to be deaf down here. Sound comes into this place, but it doesn't leave. Do you understand? If they realize you can't hear them, they will come closer." A suffocating silence fell over the room. And then, from right inside the concrete wall we were leaning against, came a faint sound. "Tap." Jackson whipped his head around. "Did you guys hear that?" Tap, tap. This time it was closer, clearer, like someone was striking the concrete with something hard and solid, like a bone. Then something else happened. A voice drifted in from the distance. It sounded human, but the words were garbled, mangled. It sounded like someone trying to speak while choking, their mouth packed with dirt. The voice grew clearer, We're here. Every hair on my arms stood on end. Lee took a step back, his flashlight trembling violently in his hand. No, no way. Is this real? It's just an echo of our own voices, right? Jackson, tell me it's a radio interference. Jackson stepped toward the wall, looking completely hypnotized. Who's out there? He yelled. Stop. Miller lunged to grab him, but he was too late. Jackson pressed his ear right against the freezing concrete. 1 second. 2 seconds. The expression on his face shattered. His smirk vanished, his eyes dilated with sheer horror. They say they know us, he whispered. What are they saying? I asked, my heart hammering against my ribs, so hard I thought it would burst. Jackson stared blankly into the void. It's my mom's voice. She's calling my name. She's telling me it's so cold inside. Miller grabbed him by the jacket and violently threw him to the floor. What the hell are you doing? Jackson shrieked. Miller leaned over him, hissing through gritted teeth. They don't want you. They want your answer. You just gave yourself to them. Behind the wall, the noise erupted. It wasn't just one voice anymore. It was several, maybe dozens of people, whispering, letting out wet, raspy laughs, scratching their fingernails against the concrete. The tunnel was drowning in the sound. We were completely surrounded. Then instantly, it all stopped, like a knife cutting a thread. Dead, suffocating silence fell over us. Our flashlights began to blink and sputter, and from the exact center of that darkness, from the deepest point of the tunnel, a sound came back to us. It was a sharp, short whistle, the exact same whistle Jackson had let out hours ago. But this time, someone or something was whistling it back at us. Incredibly slow, incredibly deliberate. Jackson's jaw trembled. Tears began streaming down his face. This is a messed up prank, he whispered, though he didn't believe his own words anymore. Lee bolted toward the exit. I'm getting the hell out of here. Open the door. Miller grabbed him by the arm, locking him in place. His hand went down to the heavy iron pipe wrench on his tool belt. Staring straight into the blackness, he said something I will never forget. Do not run, not yet. If we move now, they will play with us. But Jackson wasn't listening to us anymore. He slowly got to his feet. His eyes were wide, but they looked entirely blank, like a blind man's. He looked right past us, staring intently into the pitch-black void behind us. My mom is crying. She's all alone. I can't leave her down there, he muttered. He took a step forward, straight into the dark. Jackson, stop. I lunged for him, but Miller threw his arm across my chest, holding me back with terrifying strength. It's too late, Tyler, he answered. Jackson stepped into the shadows. The beam of his flashlight danced frantically against the brick walls for a few seconds, and then it abruptly died. Just moments later, a wet, sickening sound echoed from the dark. It sounded like someone ripping a massive piece of raw meat away from the bone with a dull butcher knife. There was no other sound. Jackson didn't even scream, just a wet gasp and the horrific crunch of snapping bones. Lee dropped to his knees, clapping his hands over his mouth. But the sheer terror inside him broke through, and he let out a piercing shriek. Jackson, huge mistake. Before Lee's scream could even finish echoing off the walls, dozens of different voices blasted back from the darkness. They were all mimicking Lee's exact voice, but distorted, warped into a demonic, mocking pitch. Jackson, Jackson, Jackson. Thick, black liquid began dripping from the tunnel, sealing onto our heads. Our flashlights died completely. We were plunged into total, absolute darkness. The only thing left was the pathetic, dim beam of the small backup light in my pocket. When I switched it on and aimed it at the floor where Lee had just been kneeling, he was gone. There was no blood, no signs of a struggle. Just his flashlight, dropped on the tracks, still rolling in a slow circle. I froze. I couldn't even draw breath into my lungs. Miller's hand, hard as iron, clamped down on my arm. We run. No matter what you hear, do not look back. Don't breathe too loud. Run. We bolted back toward the lift. We didn't hear the sound of footsteps chasing us. No, what we heard was much worse. It was the sound of bones scraping against concrete, the sound of something slithering along the walls and across the ceiling, keeping pace right above us. When we hit the heavy iron door at the entrance, Miller threw me through the opening. But he stayed on the other side, pulling the massive iron door shut from the inside. "Miller, get in here," I screamed. He looked at me through the narrowing gap. For the first time, there was no fear on his face, just a bizarre, disturbing peace. "I've been a part of this place for a very long time, Tyler," he said. And then he smiled. But it wasn't Miller's smile. It was a wide, jagged, completely unnatural grin that stretched too far across his face. And behind him, out of the darkness, dozens of pale, hollow faces materialized. Every single one of them was wearing Miller's smile. He slammed the door shut. The heavy iron latch dropped into place with a deafening clang. I sprinted to the elevator alone, slamming my fist against the button like a madman. As the elevator doors began to slide shut, I heard the heavy iron door below violently splintering apart. All the way up the dark shaft, a chorus of whistles followed me. The sounds gradually shifted, morphing into my own voice, calling my own name up the shaft. "Tyler, Tyler, come back down." The official incident report stated that Jackson and Lee were caught in an accidental tunnel collapse. The search and rescue teams spent weeks down there, but they never recovered the bodies. As for Miller, when HR went to pull the archives, they found out that no one with the last name Miller had ever been employed by the transit authority. The supervisor, his face completely bloodless, stared at me and tossed the paperwork across the desk. "Tyler, what the hell are you talking about? Only you, Jackson, and Lee went down to that line. There was no fourth man. I quit the job that very day. I didn't even go back to collect my final paycheck. Now, I live far away from the city, in a small town on the surface where the sun is always shining. I chose an apartment on the 3rd floor, just so I can have solid concrete beneath my feet instead of dirt. I live with a diagnosis of severe PTSD. Antidepressants and sleeping pills are my only real friends now. I leave every single light on at night. I am so terrified of the quiet that I keep either the TV or the radio running 24/7. Because whenever the world goes truly silent, my mind drifts back to that absolute void beneath the concrete. Taking the subway, or even walking through an underground pedestrian tunnel, is completely out of the question for me. If I catch even a faint whiff of damp concrete or rusty iron on the street, my throat tightens up and my heart hammers against my chest like it's trying to break free. I don't see ghosts. Nothing supernatural happens to me out here. But the second I close my eyes, I see Jackson smiling as he walks into the dark. I hear Lee's scream dissolving into nothingness. And worst of all, I see the missing man, Miller, wearing that strange, impossibly wide grin. My boss gave me a strict list of rules for the night shift. I just found out why I have to mop the bathroom at exactly 3:15 a.m. Working the graveyard shift at a desolate highway gas station completely strips away your sense of time. The long, cracked stretches of asphalt, extending in both directions, remain entirely empty for hours. The fluorescent lights overhead hum with a constant, irritating vibration that settles deep into your teeth. I took the job because my bank account was completely depleted, and the owner paid entirely in cash at the end of every single week. He was an older, heavyset man who constantly chewed on unlit cigars and rarely looked me in the eyes when he spoke. During my first night, the owner handed me a heavy wooden clipboard holding a single sheet of lined paper. He tapped his thick finger against the top of the page. The register automatically locks at midnight. The owner explained, "You only accept cash through the sliding transaction window. You stay behind the bulletproof glass until 6 in the morning." I wrote down the daily tasks. You sweep the aisles, restock the coolers, and wipe down the coffee machines. You follow the list exactly as I wrote it. Do we understand each other? "I understand," I replied, taking the clipboard. "Is there anything else I need to know about the security system?" "The cameras record to a digital drive under the counter," he said, turning toward the heavy glass door. "Do not mess with the drive. Just read the list. Stick to the list, and you will get your envelope on Friday." After he drove away, leaving me completely alone in the I building, I sat on the tall metal stool behind the counter and read the instructions. The first 3 rules were completely standard retail procedures regarding inventory and cleaning schedules. Rule number 4 was written in thick, heavily pressed red ink. If a rusted white van pulls up to pump 2 at 3:00 a.m., the driver will get out and walk to the transaction window. He will ask for the bathroom key. Give him the heavy brass key hanging on the hook under the register. Do not give him the standard plastic key. When he leaves the property, take the mop and bucket into the bathroom immediately. Clean the floor. Do not touch the water on the tiles with your bare hands. Use the thick rubber gloves provided in the utility closet. I stared at the red ink for a long time. The extreme specificity of the instruction felt deeply unsettling. I assumed it was simply a quirk of the job, perhaps dealing with a regular, eccentric local resident who had some kind of medical condition. The deep isolation of the highway breeds strange habits, and I needed the weekly cash far too much to question the logistics of cleaning a bathroom floor. The rusted white van arrived on my 3rd night. I was wiping down the glass surface of the hot dog roller when the harsh headlights cut through the darkness outside. I watched the vehicle pull slowly into the glowing circle of light cast by the overhead canopy. It parked perfectly parallel to the second fuel pump. The engine idled with a rough, choking sputter. The exterior of the van was heavily corroded, the metal eaten away by years of severe rust and neglect. The rear windows were completely blacked out with peeling tint. The driver's door opened with a loud screech. A man stepped out onto the concrete pad. He wore a dark canvas coat and loose jeans. As he walked toward the bulletproof glass of the transaction window, I noticed his heavy boots were leaving wet footprints across the dry pavement. He moved with a slow, dragging gait. I stepped behind the register and waited. The man stopped directly in front of the glass. His appearance sent a wave of adrenaline through my chest. His skin was incredibly pale, bearing a sickly gray pallor that completely lacked the natural flush of circulating blood. His dark hair was entirely plastered to his skull, dripping steadily onto the collar of his heavy coat. He looked as though he had just crawled out of a freezing river. The smell penetrated the small gap in the transaction window immediately. It was a dense, suffocating odor of stagnant water, and wet mud. "I need the key," the driver said. "Which one?" I asked, my hands trembling slightly as I reached under the counter. "The heavy key," he replied, staring blankly at my chest. He never made eye contact. I pulled the thick brass key off the hidden hook and slid it through the metal transaction tray. The driver took it with a pale hand. His fingers were severely wrinkled, the skin puckered from extreme water exposure. He turned around and walked slowly toward the exterior bathroom doors located on the side of the building. I watched the surveillance monitor sitting on the counter. The screen displayed the black and white feed from the camera pointing at the side entrances. I watched the driver insert the heavy brass key, open the door, and step inside into the darkness. Exactly 15 minutes later, the bathroom door opened. The driver emerged, walked back to the transaction window, and dropped the brass key into the metal tray. He did not say a single word. He returned to his rusted van, started the choking engine, and drove away into the darkness of the highway. I grabbed the rubber gloves from the utility closet, filled the yellow plastic mop bucket with hot water and bleach, and walked outside. The freezing night air bit at my face. I unlocked the bathroom door and stepped inside. The floor was completely flooded. A layer of dark, murky water covered the white tiles. The smell of stagnant mud and decay was overwhelmingly powerful in the enclosed space. I remembered the rule written in red ink. I kept the thick rubber gloves pulled high over my forearms and began to mop. I wrung the dark water into the bucket, pouring the filthy contents down the utility drain, and scrubbed the tiles until they were completely dry. I locked the door and returned to the safety of the enclosure. This routine continued flawlessly for 6 weeks. Every single night at exactly 3 a.m, the rusted van pulled up to the second pump. The pale driver asked for the heavy key. He went into the bathroom for 15 minutes, returned the key, and drove away. I put on the rubber gloves, mopped the flooded floor, and disposed of the murky water. The repetition of the event slowly eroded my initial terror, transforming the bizarre encounter into just another mundane chore on my nightly checklist. The breaking point happened on a Tuesday night during a relentless rainstorm. Van arrived on schedule. The driver completed his slow, silent transaction and retreated to the side of the building. After he returned the key and drove away into the driving rain, I gathered my cleaning supplies. I pulled the heavy rubber gloves up to my elbows, grabbed the mop, and wheeled the yellow plastic bucket out to the bathroom. I opened the door and flipped on the light. The floor was flooded, bearing the usual layer of dark, foul-smelling water. I set the bucket down near the sink and began to push the mop across the slick tiles. I was exhausted, my muscles aching from the cold dampness of the night. I pushed the waterlogged mop head toward the corner of the room, using entirely too much force. The wooden handle slipped aggressively from my wet grip. The heavy mop collided violently with the side of the yellow bucket. The plastic container tipped entirely over, spilling the mixture of bleach and collected floor water across the tiles in a chaotic splash. I let out a frustrated sigh and crouched down on my knees to right the bucket. As I reached down, I noticed the solid debris scattered across the wet tiles. The dark water left behind by the driver always contained small amounts of grit, but the spill had spread the contents of the bucket out into a thin layer, exposing the larger particles. I leaned closer, inspecting the debris sticking to the wet porcelain of the toilet base. They were long, thick strands of dark green aquatic weeds. The plant matter was slimy, coated in a thick layer of river mud. Scattered among the weeds were several small, jagged fragments of decaying wood and rusted metal fasteners. The smell rising from the spilled water was intensely concentrated. The bleach could not mask the stench. I stood up slowly, a primal unease settling into my stomach. I finished cleaning the floor in a frantic, panicked rush, ensuring I did not touch a single drop of the foul water with my bare skin. I locked the bathroom, sprinted back through the pouring rain, and sealed myself inside the bulletproof enclosure. I sat on the tall metal stool and stared at the surveillance monitor. I thought this time I wanted to know exactly what the driver was doing inside that room for 15 minutes every single night. I grabbed the computer mouse and pulled up the digital recording archive. I selected the timestamp for 3 a.m. and pressed play. The black and white footage showed the rusted van pulling up to the pump. The driver stepped out, walked to my window, and then moved toward the side of the building. The camera perfectly captured him inserting the brass key and stepping into the bathroom. The door pulled completely shut behind him. I watched the timecode ticking in the bottom corner of the screen. 1 minute passed, 5 minutes passed, 10 minutes passed. I stared intensely at the door on the monitor, waiting for the driver to emerge. The timecode hit exactly 15 minutes. The camera feed glitched. A thick band of digital static rolled aggressively down the screen, disrupting the video signal for a fraction of a second. When the picture stabilized, the metal bathroom door was completely closed. I frowned, rewinding the footage by 30 seconds. I watched the door again. The static rolled down the screen. The door remained entirely shut. I fast-forwarded the video. The timecode advanced to 20 minutes, then 30 minutes. The door never opened. I pulled up the exterior camera, pointing at the gas pumps. The rusted white van was sitting next to the second pump at 14 minutes past the hour. At exactly 15 minutes, the camera experienced the exact same burst of digital static. When the picture cleared, the van was completely gone. I pushed the computer mouse away, my hands shaking uncontrollably. The rational, logical part of my brain demanded that I ignore the footage. It demanded that I accept the paycheck and continue mopping the floor. But the horror of the situation completely hijacked my nervous system. I needed to understand the reality of the bathroom. I grabbed the brass key from the hook under the register. I grabbed my flashlight from my backpack and walked back out into the pouring rain. I unlocked the bathroom door and stepped inside, shutting it firmly behind me. I turned off the light, plunging the small room into darkness, and engaged the beam of my flashlight. I swept the bright circle of light across the tiles, the cheap porcelain sink, and the metal toilet stall. The room was entirely mundane. There were no hidden alcoves, no removable ceiling tiles, and absolutely no secondary exits. It was a solid cinderblock box. I looked down at the brass key resting in my palm. The teeth on the key were incredibly complex, far too intricate for the cheap, standard commercial lock mounted on the exterior door. The key belonged to a different mechanism. I dropped to my knees on the damp tiles and crawled toward the space directly beneath the sink. The plumbing pipes ran down into the concrete floor, surrounded by a thick, rusted metal base plate. I shined the flashlight directly onto the metal plate, hidden completely on the underside of the heavy iron disc. Obscured by decades of accumulated grime and hard water stains, was a small, circular keyhole. My breath caught in my throat. I slowly inserted the brass key into the hidden slot. It slid perfectly into place. I gripped the brass bow and turned it forcefully to the right. Loud clack echoed violently beneath the concrete floor. I grabbed the edges of the rusted metal baseplate and pulled upward. The entire section of tiled floor beneath the sink lifted smoothly away, revealing a dark, square opening plunging straight down into the foundation of the building. A wave of putrid air aggressively rushed up from the hole, carrying the overwhelming, gagging stench of something dead. I aimed my flashlight down into the opening. Narrow, rusted iron ladder descended roughly 10 feet into a massive bunker. A beam of light illuminated a horrific, devastating reality. The entire underground space was flooded, holding at least 4 feet of dark, murky river water. Floating completely stagnant on the surface of the foul liquid were dozens of decaying, waterlogged suitcases, torn canvas duffel bags, and children's backpacks, protruding violently from the dark water, tangled deeply in the thick strands of aquatic river weeds were human skeletal remains. There were dozens of them, pale, stained skulls resting against the concrete walls, ribcage wrapped tightly in decaying, algae-covered clothing. Small, fragile bones sinking deeply into the thick layer of mud coating the floor of the bunker. I fell backward away from the hole, scrambling frantically across the wet bathroom tiles. I covered my mouth with both hands, suppressing a violent surge of nausea, my mind spinning chaotically as the pieces of the nightmare slammed together. A sharp, aggressive knock echoed violently against the exterior bathroom door. My entire body locked into a rigid state of paralysis. I stared wildly at the door. I had locked the deadbolt when I stepped inside. "Who is out there?" I yelled, my voice cracking severely. There was no response. The driving rain continued to beat heavily against the roof of the building. I slowly pushed myself off the floor, keeping the beam of my flashlight trained directly on the door handle. I took a slow, trembling step forward. I reached out, grabbed the cold metal lock, and turned the deadbolt. I pulled the door open and pointed the flashlight directly out into the rain. The concrete walkway was completely empty. The glowing perimeter of the gas station was entirely deserted. I stood in the doorway, staring out into the empty storm, the cold rain blowing aggressively across my face. Then I heard the sound. It came from directly behind me, originating deep inside the small, enclosed space of the bathroom. It was a heavy, dragging footstep. The sickening, squelching sound of a completely waterlogged boot pressing firmly against the wet tile floor. My blood turned entirely to ice. The heavy trapdoor beneath the sink was still wide open. I turned my head slowly, moving with an agonizing, terrified hesitation, shining the beam back into the bathroom. Standing between the open trapdoor and the sink was the driver. He did not look like the pale, dripping man who stood outside the transaction window. His physical form had completely deteriorated into a state of horrifying putrefaction. His body was massively bloated, his skin swollen and stretched tightly over his expanding tissues. The flesh was a sickly, mottled purple, sloughing off his jawbone in thick, wet strips. Dark, murky water poured heavily from his open, rotting mouth, cascading down his chest and soaking into the ruined fabric of his heavy canvas coat. He raised a bloated, decaying hand, the long, jagged fingernails pointing directly at my face. Then he took a dragging step toward me. I abandoned the flashlight, dropped it onto the wet concrete, and sprinted blindly out into the rain. I ran with desperate adrenaline, tearing across the flooded parking lot toward the glass doors of the main building. I heard the aggressive, wet slapping of his dragging boots moving rapidly behind me, closing the distance with a terrifying, unnatural speed. I reached the glass doors, threw my entire body weight against the metal handles, and practically fell into the brightly lit interior. I scrambled wildly behind the main counter, ignoring the transaction window entirely, and threw myself violently against the solid wooden door leading into the owner's private back office. I twisted the heavy brass lock, securing the deadbolt just as a massive, devastating impact slammed aggressively against the other side of the wood. The door shuddered violently on its hinges. A low, gurgling, watery roar echoed heavily through the walls of the gas station. I backed away from the locked door, my chest heaving with deep, frantic gasps for air. The small, windowless office was cluttered with tall metal filing cabinets, stacks of cardboard inventory boxes, and a wooden desk positioned in the center of the room. I pulled my cell phone from my damp pocket. My fingers were shaking so severely I could barely unlock the screen. I pulled up the owner's contact number and pressed the call button, holding the phone tightly against my ear. The call immediately failed. The screen displayed a harsh, no network connection error. The severe storm outside had completely knocked out the cellular towers in the region. I was entirely cut off from the outside world. The wet impacts against the door ceased. The gas station fell into a deep, oppressive silence, broken only by the steady drumming of the rain on the roof. I needed something to defend myself. I began frantically tearing through the cluttered office, pulling open the heavy metal drawers of the filing cabinets, searching desperately for a firearm, a heavy metal tool, or a sharp object. The drawers contained nothing but endless stacks of tax documents, vendor receipts, and old payroll ledgers. I moved to the wooden desk, pulling aggressively on the locked bottom drawer. It refused to open. I grabbed a metal paperweight sitting on the desktop and smashed it violently against the cheap lock mechanism until the wood splintered and gave way. I pulled the drawer open. There was no gun inside. Resting at the bottom of the drawer was a thick, leather-bound notebook and a small iron lockbox. I grabbed the notebook and flipped it open. The pages were filled with the owner's messy, slanted handwriting. It was not an inventory ledger. It was a detailed, methodical accounting of human trafficking. Entries explicitly detailed the owner's highly lucrative side business. He used the isolated location of the gas station as a transfer point for undocumented immigrants being smuggled across the border. The owner used the underground concrete bunker hidden beneath the bathroom as a temporary holding cell, locking the desperate people in the dark while he collected exorbitant transit fees from their families. I turned the pages rapidly. I stopped on an entry dated exactly 7 years ago. The handwriting in this specific entry was deeply pressed into the paper, frantic and chaotic. The storm breached the levee behind the tree line. The entry read, "The runoff flooded the drainage pipes. It backed up directly into the bunker ventilation system. I could hear them screaming from the office. I could hear them beating against the bottom of the trapdoor. The water filled the concrete box in less than 20 minutes. They all drowned in the dark. I am not opening the trapdoor. I am keeping the cash, and the concrete is thick enough to hide the smell." I stared at the page, a profound, sickening realization settling heavily into my brain. I turned to the final, most recent entry in the book. The driver came tonight. The owner had written, the ink slightly smeared by sweat. I think he was one of them. I know that because of the white van. I remember him. He was working in delivery with it in his home, wanted to come here for better life, to provide for his family. Sadly, this is how life goes. They are dead down there, and I am alive here. The problem is, he pulled up to the pump at 3 in the morning, asked for the key. I think he's still convinced that he is alive, and he wants to open the door and let them out. The dead do not know they are dead. I think he is trapped in the routine, so as long as I give him the brass key, he goes into the bathroom, tries to open the rusted floor plate, and disappears. He just needs to try. As long as I let him run his ghost routine, he does not come into the store, and the new kid can handle the floor. I retreated to the furthest corner of the small room, pressing my back tightly against the cold metal of the filing cabinets. I pulled my knees to my chest, gripping the leather notebook tightly in my trembling hands. Impacts continued against the door for hours. I listened to the horrific, wet, tearing sounds of bloated flesh pressing against the wood. I listened to the low, gurgling moans echoing through the narrow gap. The smell of decay in the office became entirely suffocating, burning the inside of my lungs. I squeezed my eyes tightly shut, praying silently to a universe I barely understood, waiting for the door to finally shatter completely. It never did. Violent assault against the office door abruptly ceased exactly as the first faint rays of morning sunlight began to bleed through the cracks in the exterior window blinds. The gurgling sounds faded entirely. The wet, dragging footsteps retreated slowly across the floor of the main store, moving toward the exterior doors. I heard the sharp, distant screech of a rusted metal van door opening and slamming shut. I heard a rough, choking engine start and the sound of tires rolling away across the wet asphalt. I remained locked in the office for another complete hour, utterly terrified that the silence was a trap. When the wall clock hit 7 in the morning, I finally stood up, unlocked the deadbolt, and slowly pushed the splintered door open. The gas station was completely empty. The floors were heavily stained with dark, foul-smelling mud, and thick puddles of murky river water covered the linoleum. But the bloated driver was gone. The owner always arrived for the morning shift at exactly 8 o'clock to collect the cash register deposits. I walked behind the counter, picked up the main landline phone, and dialed emergency services. The landline connection was perfectly stable. I explicitly told the dispatcher to send multiple units to the gas station immediately. I told them exactly where to find the trapdoor under the bathroom sink. I sat on the tall metal stool and waited. The police cruisers arrived in a chaotic flurry of flashing lights and wailing sirens, just as the owner's heavy pickup truck pulled into the parking lot. I walked out of the building, handed the thick leather notebook directly to the cops, and pointed silently toward the heavyset owner standing by his truck. I watched the color drain completely from his face as the police officers read the ledger. I watched them place the steel handcuffs over his wrists and shove him forcefully into the back of a patrol car. I gave a lengthy, exhaustive statement to the authorities at the precinct. I detailed the evidence of the bunker, the notebook, and the financial ledgers. I completely omitted any mention of the dripping, rotting revenant or the haunted routine. The police did not need ghost stories to secure a conviction. The massive, flooded tomb hidden beneath the foundation was more than enough evidence to put the owner in a concrete cell for the rest of his life. I am unemployed again, and my bank account is still empty, but I do not care. I am alive. I keep thinking about the rusted white van pulling away from the gas station in the early morning light. The trapdoor in the bathroom was finally opened. The horrific secret was entirely exposed, and the man responsible for the atrocity was dragged away in chains. I stare at the ceiling of my apartment, listening to the morning rain hit my window, and I truly hope the driver finally got his closure. I hope the drowned souls resting in the dark can finally leave the bunker. I never kept a diary as a child. Today, I found one with my name on it. Hey, Chris here. Trying to muster some courage with internet strangers for a bizarre situation I have. I found this diary, a diary that's supposed to be mine. It says Chris right on the cover, and I found it behind some old boxes we keep in our shed. There's one issue, however. I never wrote a diary when I was a kid, yet somehow I'm holding it right now in my hand. I don't understand how, but there's something wrong with it. It started off fairly normal. It describes events of my childhood that I recall. Things I like, things I don't. But then it started getting strange. Like it's getting scary. I don't have the courage to keep reading on my own. So, I wanted to post here to see if anyone had any similar experiences. Let me show you what I mean. I'll read the first passages. August 5th. Woke up, got up. Went downstairs. Mom made pancakes. My favorite. Seemed pretty ordinary so far. I do love my mom's pancakes. She used to make them every weekend. Here's the next one. August 15th. Woke up, got up. Went downstairs. Mom made pancakes. My favorite. I was eating them when I saw a man looking at us from outside the window. Now this doesn't seem ordinary, but it gets worse. August 20th. Woke up, got up. Went downstairs. Mom made pancakes. The man outside the window is getting closer. I didn't eat. This is where I started getting concerned. A man outside the window. What the hell? I obviously don't remember any of this, but I started thinking I had suppressed some part of my life. I'm not sure. Here's some more passages that seem normal. I'll explain as they go. October 1st. Went out of town with Grandpa and Grandma near the woods. They told me the same thing as always. Watch out for bears. Never eat near the honey trees. This I remember. Every autumn I went to my grandparents' house. They always said this. It basically just meant to watch out for certain animals in the woods. It was a weird thing to say, but I recall them always telling me that. November 3rd. Used the lake behind the house. It was freezing, but water keeps them away. I started getting confused with this one. I used to wash in the lake. I don't remember that. There's one behind my house, but I don't remember going there in the winter. And I don't understand who is being kept away. January 5th. Mary went to the supermarket with her mom. I saw her. I wish I could go talk to her. This one seems pretty simple, but there's just one problem. I don't know any Mary. At least I think I don't. I don't recall someone named that. But then I read the next entry. January 15th. I saw Mary today at the park. She's so pretty. It scares me to go near her. She's playing with her friends. They're playing hopscotch. I don't understand how they do it. I don't understand how. I stayed next to Mom. We were going to the Dr. S. I just kept looking at them. How do they do it? How are they not scared of that thing, with no eyes behind them? I remember slamming the diary shut when I read that. That's the last of the entries I read on my own. They're getting more and more impossible. I remember pancakes, but I don't recall a man watching us. I remember my grandparents' autumn visits but I don't remember bathing in the lake near my house. And I don't know who this Mary person is, or what was behind her. I'm going to keep reading. I'll post them as I go. May 5th. Mom sang to me today. She said I'm her one and only. She'll never let me go. It calmed me down. It eases my nerves. It makes the monsters go away. I understand this part. Mom used to sing to me a lot when I was a kid. She did always say that. You're my one and only. But monsters, I think there's something wrong with this diary. June 15th. Mom told me they aren't real, but I see them. Outside my room, outside her room, everywhere. They're everywhere. I'm hiding the key. Help me, please help me. Fuck, what the hell is this? When did I write this? Did I see something as a kid that I don't remember? I sound crazy. Okay, I have to stop. This is too much. I'm going to stop reading, and I'll continue tomorrow. I'm not a kid anymore, but this is just too freaky. I have to process and try to understand what this is about. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Sorry, I'll be sure to update this soon. Update. Hey, back again. Some updates as to what happened. It's been 2 days, but I have to talk about what happened. I am now convinced that the diary is mine. You see, the way it's written is very unique. The way I write my vowels is sort of different to everyone else. My mom taught me to write this way. It's an Icelandic thing, just don't mind it. It's certainly my diary, and I certainly don't remember writing it. Speaking of my mom, I went to ask her if I wrote a diary when I was young. She just looked at me. I have never seen her face like that. She looked lifeless, like I said something wrong. No, dear, you didn't, she replied. There was a coldness in her voice. I'm not sure what that's about. She told me one more thing before I left. I froze. You weren't in the shed, were you? No, I lied. I had to. She must know something about this. Something else happened. At the end of the diary is a key. I remembered there's a locked chest in the shed where I found the diary. I think that's what the key is for. I'm afraid of checking. I'm afraid of what's locked inside. I don't know what happened to me in the past. I'm going to keep reading. I'll post as I go. Let me start from where I left off. August 1st. Mom took me to the carnival today. She says I'll feel good one day. She prays for me every night. I pray for her. There's a man walking with us. I don't know him. He has no face. August 2nd. I don't want to go on. I want it to end. The man with no face looks at me as I write. He laughs. He laughs without a face. What the hell? I don't want to read anymore. But there are only 3 more passages. August 5th. Woke up, got up, went downstairs. Mom didn't make pancakes. She never does anymore. All she does is pray. When will it end? I don't want to see them anymore. I just read the last 2 entries. What the fuck is this? August 10th. I see them around me. The shadows, their faces, twisted and grinning. Please help me. Date. Help, 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 help. It just ends like this. This is insane. I need to gather my thoughts. I'm not sure what any of this means. My mother is leaving in a bit. I'm going to go check the chest in the shed and see if this key works. I'll update you here on what I found. I'm scared, but there's a gun in the shed. If push comes to shove, I'll see you guys in a bit. I went to the shed. I was so scared, I grabbed the gun. I'm not sure what I was expecting. Maybe a man, maybe a monster from my past. I put the key in and it clicked. I opened the chest. I wish I didn't. It's full of photos. There are so many of them. Photos of a boy with my mother. They look so happy. He's young, probably 5 years old. I've never seen this boy in my life. And then there's a photo of a baby. I think it's me. There's a man and a woman holding me. I don't know who they are. There's a series of papers here. I can see them now. They have my name. They have my social security number, but they don't have my face. They have his. His face is in every paper, from the prescription form for schizophrenia medication to his obituary. It's just him. I want to vomit. He looks just like me. I was wrong. This isn't my diary. It's his. Oh my God, who the hell am I? Shit, my mom just got home. She's inside the house now. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. I'm scared. I don't understand what's going on. I don't think this woman is my mother. I don't think my name is Chris. I got locked in an aquarium. We got caught in traffic, and it was less than an hour until closing. We hurried past the jellyfish, undulating under UV light, past a huge tank with a blacktip reef shark, tail sweeping through the water. We tried to hit all the best exhibits, but we still lost track of time. When we went to exit, the doors were locked. "Hello," Derek called. "Can someone open the door for us, please?" No reply. The concession stand, the ticketing booth, were all dark and empty. I peered out the window at the falling dusk, the desolate parking lot. Really desolate. I didn't see a single car. Maybe they all left. Without noticing, we were still here. No way. But as we walked down the hallway, past a display of lionfish flitting through the water, it looked like I was right. The lights were dim, and there wasn't a single sound coming from everywhere. The ambient music they piped over the speakers had been turned off. We did a full circuit through the aquarium, past the manta ray touch tank, closed and shuttered, past the glowing jellyfish, past the huge shark tank. No one was there. Should we call the police? I asked as we made our way back to the entrance. I guess so. I still can't believe they de-lock up without doing a sweep of the whole place. I pulled out my phone. Only one bar. I dialed. A single ring sounded in my ear before cutting off midway. "I don't think I have reception," I said. Derek pulled out his phone. "Me neither. There's got to be someone still here. A janitor or something." "Come on," I said, walking back towards the hallway. When we'd done the lap around, it had been quick. If someone was in a back room, we wouldn't have seen them. I sprinted further back into the aquarium. The jellyfish still undulated under the UV light, oblivious to us. Can they even hear? I thought, as I shouted at the top of my lungs, and they didn't seem to react. The sharks swam in the enormous tank, watching us with bulging eyes. The little terrarium with the turtles spilled golden light out into the darkness. "Is anyone here?" I called. Nothing. At exactly 7:30, the lights dimmed over our heads. I pulled out my phone again. No reception. I sat on the floor against a fake outcropping of rock, hiding my face in my hands. "We're trapped in here," I whispered. "Someone else got to come back. I mean, they have cameras, right? They can probably see us right now." He took a deep breath. "And anyway, worst case scenario, the aquarium opens at 8 a.m. tomorrow. That's in like 12 hours. We can't stay here all night." "Why not?" "Well, for one thing, I'm starving. So there's food here." Derek, always keeping his calm, even in the worst of scenarios. I still remembered that time the engine blew out on our flight to LA. I was catatonic, throwing up in a bag, and thinking I was going to die. Derek was calm the whole time, rubbing my back, telling me we'd be fine. Later, he told me he was about to have a full-blown panic attack, but he shoved it all down and kept calm for me. This time, though, he really did seem calm. "Come on," he said, pulling me up from the floor. Most of the cafe was locked, but there was a little fridge of drinks and freezer of Dippin' Dots that were unsecured. We sat in the empty seating area downing the dots, actually having an okay time. "We're really sleeping with the fishes now," Derek said. "Ha, ha," I replied, rolling my eyes and grabbing another chocolate. Our voices echoed into the huge space, the sharks swimming by peacefully behind me in their enormous tank. Suddenly, Derek's face dropped. "What?" He shook his head and looked down at the ice cream. "Nothing." I narrowed my eyes at him. "No, what?" "I just thought I saw something," he said quickly. "What?" Just his eyes flicked up and then widened as he stared at a spot over my shoulder. I whipped around just in time to see a dark shape flit out of view in the tank. My heart plummeted. Was that a person? Looked like it. Diver in the tanks right now. Maybe cleaning the tank or something. Feeding the sharks. I shot up and ran over to the window. Up against it now, I could see into nearly the entire tank. And there, a person, in full scuba gear, darting behind a fake stand of coral. I slapped at the window. "Hey, we're locked in," I shouted. "Can you let us out?" I could see the trail of bubbles coming up from behind the fake coral, but I couldn't see the scuba diver anymore. Derek joined me, and we watched, perplexed. "Why isn't he coming out?" "I don't know," Derek said. His green eyes focused on the water. "Shouldn't he be, cleaning or feeding them or something?" "I guess. It's almost like he's intentionally hiding from us." Dread sank into me. That's crazy. Right. Why would someone doing maintenance on the tanks hide from us? Some dumb kids who got stuck in the aquarium. The fake coral had little holes in it. He could very well be watching us, even though we couldn't see him. I backed away from the tank. "I don't like this," I whispered. "I know it's weird." I pulled out my phone again. 0 bars this time. I tried to call the police, but the line didn't even connect. Fuck. I tugged Derek out of view of the tank. "Come on," I said. We ducked into the hallway, decorated to look like an underwater tunnel with fake rocks that cut away into fish tanks. Dim lights reflected on the floor, casting deep shadows. "There's got to be an emergency exit somewhere," I said, turning a sharp left into the room with the jellyfish. The UV lights were still on, illuminating the edges of their transparent forms. They silently undulated through the water. Up and down, up and down. I scanned the darkness for a red exit sign, but I didn't see any. There's got to be one somewhere. I ran deeper into the aquarium, Derek following close behind, our footsteps echoing across the glass tanks. Schlappe. I froze. "What was that?" I whispered. It sounded like something heavy and wet hitting the ground, coming from up ahead, the shark tank. Derek grabbed my shoulders, pulling me into an alcove behind one of the fake rocky outcroppings. My back hit the spherical window looking into the sea turtle tank, distorting our reflection. A wet slapping sound echoed from ahead. It has to be the guy we saw in the tank. I held my breath. "Don't come down this way, please." The silence stretched on. Derek slowly leaned forward, peering around the edge of the rock. Then he darted back in. He held a finger to his lips, eyes wide in the sickly blue light from the tank. "What?" I mouthed. "He's there," he mouthed back, pointing. I leaned forward slightly. He was standing there in the hallway, facing away from us. The man in the scuba gear. Water dripping down his body and pooling on the floor. Before I could get a good look, Derek yanked me back, pulling me close to him. He held his finger to his lips again, shaking his head. My heart pounded in my ears. My lungs burned, and I let out my breath slowly, silently, as quietly as I could. Go, please. The minutes ticked on, but I didn't hear any footsteps. He was still there. He knows we're here. He's waiting for us to come out. We stood frozen against the window, and then I heard it. Tap, tap, tap. I wheeled around. Oh, he was right there, on the other side of the window. One hand lifted, a slender finger tapping on the glass, silhouetted by the vivid blue water behind him. But there was something terribly wrong with him. The scuba mask was fused to his face. No, it was part of his skin. Waterlogged, beige flesh lifted off his eyes and cheekbones to hold a foggy piece of glass, shielding enormous eyes. His body was twisted, almost fish-like, ending in flippered feet. Pain shot up my arm, and I realized Derek was yanking me away. I'd frozen in shock. I finally tore my eyes away from him, and we ran back through the aquarium, towards the entrance. A loud splash sounded from somewhere, and a minute later, that awful wet slapping sound behind us. I forced myself to not look back, to keep my eyes ahead, on the fish, the sharks, everything passing us in a blur. We burst out into the entrance area. Derek grabbed a chair from the concession stand and hauled it above his head. In a quick motion, he threw it at the glass door. It shattered, bits of tempered glass raining down on the floor. Slap, slap, slap. Run, I screamed. It was too late. Something knocked me to the floor. And then I was sliding, being pulled by my ankles, sliding towards the tanks. The smell of rotten fish wafted over me. He's going to throw me in the tank. Food. I'm food. I kicked wildly. Derek grabbed me by the arms, and then suddenly I was free, being pulled out the door, into the darkness outside. We scrambled up and ran to the car. I couldn't breathe until we were locked inside. What was that? Let's get out of here, Derek said, ignoring my question. No one believed our story, of course. Not the police, not our friends, no one. Scared teenagers flipping out over the guy who feeds the sharks at night. That's what everyone thought. Maybe I would even think it too. That I'd scared myself into imagining things in the dim light of the closed aquarium. Except there are thick scratches on my ankles, scabbing over from where that thing touched me, and the slightest bit of skin webbing between my toes. And that's where I'll leave you tonight. I hope you enjoyed these as much as I enjoyed bringing them to you. If any of them are still sitting with you, good. That means they did their job. Get some rest if you can, and I'll see you next time. Same time, same place, beyond the unknown.